All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cameo podcast. I'm sitting at, I find myself recording another podcast at a table outside of Redbeard, the same table, sitting across from Brian Saunderson, who I incorrectly thought was a podcaster when I first met him. That's not true. He is an internet radio show host. Is that correct?
I struggle with what to call my show because, I call it a radio show on the internet. Basically, what I do is I play songs, I speak between them, and that's a radio show to me.
No, and when I was listening to your show, which is called Hurtin for Real, which focuses on country music, and the way you put it is good country music, which, it's not the pop genre.
Yes.
But when I was listening to him, I'm like, does he come from a background of like working for CBC? Because the way you like from the absolute get-go, it's like it reminded me of kind of those rock shows I would listen to on CBC.
Oh yeah.
Right, your filler gaps, kind of drawing the two songs in together and the whole nine yards. Yep. And here you are doing it at home in, essentially with just a microphone you can pick up at London Drugs.
Yeah, it was easy to put together. I kind of made my own studio at home, and I got the microphone. I got a big computer built for me, and it's like a little library in there too. I used to own a record store.
Oh, really?
And my dad and I built these pine racks, CD racks, and record racks. And so what I've done is I've just stood them up on end, and I've got all this shelving now.
Yes.
Of beautiful pine wood, and it's kind of a neat place to hang out and do a radio show.
Yeah, and I know you still frequent the local record store, Barnacle Records.
Oh yeah,
I know they know you.
Yeah, I've known Ronan and Jesse for a long time, and I'm glad they have a country section. They've got a substantial amount of country. So
yeah, they don't have a bias towards one genre or another. They kind of do the whole spectrum, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Which for a small town to have a dedicated record store.
I know every town needs a good record store, a good bookstore, and a good bakery, and I'm glad we've got a good record store now.
We've got some good bakeries. I don't know about bookstores.
Yep. We've got some, but I mean, Barnacle, I'm just thrilled every time I walk in there. In fact, my old record store was in that very spot.
Seriously?
Yes. So
no way.
It's pretty dear to me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It's
like what? So this is the kind of conversations that we were talking about, the difference between your show and my show, where yours is like a radio show, where mine's more of a internet, just interview conversation. And these are sort of interesting things that, you just can't plan for.
Yeah.
Learning that it's your parents' old source. So were you born here in town?
Yes. Yeah, Heffley Creek.
Heffley Creek.
Well, born in Kamloops, but raised in Heffley Creek, and been here for a long time. Yeah.
And did your parents have the record store when you were born, or was that come about?
No, I opened that when I was in my early 30s.
Oh, okay.
So this was a while ago, and I had it for 2-3 years, and then decided to go back to teaching. But before that, I worked at Jack Daniel's Dance Hall. I was a DJ there.
As in CJ's?
Yeah, then it turned into Cactus Jack's, then it turned into CJ's. But it was a lot different back then.
So you've really got some real roots in like the country record music scene here in town.
I guess so.
It's kind of cool that you've evolved with the times, and now you've got your internet radio show, and it's not music that I would have expected to hear on like an internet radio show, right? Like. Yeah. When I think of country music, I'm going to think, 103.1 New Country.
Yeah. The funny thing about the type of stuff I play is there's DJs from all over the world that do the same thing that I do. I mean, there might be on community radio stations. Mm-hmm. I listen to those regularly. There are archives of, campus stations, community stations that play, they've got better shows than I have. And they, there are real similarities, but there are, guys who have podcasts, similar, I guess, to what I have, if you want to call it a podcast, a radio show, whatever. And then there's, there's good radio stations in, let's say, Texas or Nashville that really focus on not the pop country or bro country stuff that you hear, on the big stations.
Well, I'll let you drink your coffee before it gets cold.
No, I don't.
But just
I like
to,
cold coffee.
just to fill people in, you can only find it on his website, which is hurtinforreal.com, and it streams. And at the very bottom, there's a little license that says SOCAN. And what SOCAN is essentially it's this Canadian association that if you want to license music for use in internet radio, you can still pay your royalties. So this is how Brian is able to legitimately have a radio station where he pays for the royalties to the artists, because everyone's got to get their cut, right? They've performed something, they created something, and that's how you can stay on side. That's correct, Brian?
Absolutely. When I first decided to make the jump from community radio to my new home, I sort of operated from the standpoint of I can't do this. And then I contacted SOCAN and Resound and the CRTC, and I contacted other DJs who do the type of thing I do. I talked to a lawyer. I talked to many who told me that it was all right to do what I wanted to do. And so, it's not cheap, to get a website and to pay SOCAN and to do the type of thing I do, the equipment, of course. But it's possible. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And there's another local internet radio station, Crazy Boy Radio, which is completely other side of, the music spectrum and like the rock, biker rock genre.
Oh yeah.
It's Crazy Boy with a K. Leroy is his name. Friends with Henry Small, and I run into him time and time again. He's a funny guy, and very similar to you, right? He has his license. And he plays his stuff, and he's got DJs all over the world, right? Where his is more like a traditional radio station on the air all the time.
Yep.
You kind of focus on doing a weekly show.
I do one show a week, yeah, and I just sort of put it up whenever I feel like it. But it's usually it's up by I'm never late with a show.
Yeah.
So I do one a week. I did half of a show before I came here today. And, I can put it together, whenever I want. That's kind of an advantage.
Totally.
And up it goes. It's there like clockwork. And, I've been doing it for 16 years. Yeah.
So how does it work with SOCAN? Like, if I go back into your archives, and since you're streaming, and I start going through your archives, are you now getting hit with those royalties? Or is it a one-time fee to have?
It's a one-time yearly fee.
Okay.
So I spend a lot of time on the phone talking about this kind of thing, and it's one time, paid it up, and that's it. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I can have them archived. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually I was trying to encourage Ronan to kind of look into that at one point. We had a good conversation that I wish I recorded, because he's always game for an intellectual discussion if you drop by his shop here and there. And
I've had a few with him.
Yeah. Really brilliant guy, and he thinks about marketing and advertising, sales, right? He's a shop owner, right? He's got to make sure that his dollars are translating into sales, but he also wants to make sure it's on brand and whatever it be, right?
Yep.
So I was always interested, because I'm looking around at the radio stations, and none of them really hit what I would want, right? Which is why I currently have a Spotify membership, which I'm going to cancel next week. But it's more that finding your niche, and how did you find your listeners, your niche? Or do you kind of just put it out there and build it, they will come sort of idea?
Good question. I connect with my listeners on Twitter.
Okay.
And so I've got a Twitter account that I'm really active on. I don't have a Facebook account. It takes up so much of my time doing the show, doing the Twitter. And, I'm able to see how many listeners I have, and it's a pretty small number. Yeah. But I'm happy with that.
Totally.
100 people listen to my show, and most of them are from Canada and the States.
Yeah.
But some of the places that they listen, it's really surprising. There's someone from Coffeyville. I don't even remember what state that's in, but they're listening, and there's a lot of places like Toronto, Calgary, Winnipeg where there's real scenes.
Yep.
And, I do a show where I did all Winnipeg artists. And then I, contacted all these artists, and they kind of did some of the work for me.
Yeah.
They spread the news about my show, and this show in particular. And then I get feedback from listeners saying, we like the show you did on all Winnipeg artists, right?
Yeah.
I just did one on Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
All artists from them. And so, there's a bit of the scene there that I connected with. So I could do a better job at marketing my show, but in a way, I don't care, I just really enjoy connecting with a small group of people as much as I would thousands, right?
Totally. And on your point of Facebook, right? Facebook is turning the tap off and more, and it's driving you into Facebook Lives and other sort of things, right? Which are, they work for you, I can do them. If they work for me in certain aspects, right? But that's another creation, right? That maybe you don't need, because the people that you're listening to or want to listen to really just want a radio show.
Yeah.
And they want that old-timey feel of, turning on their grandmother's old transistor radio or tube radio and kind of hearing the country drawl come on out.
Sure, yeah. I remember when I was a kid and I would listen to Finkelman's 45s. I was more like a teenager, I guess. And it was on CBC.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get my little Walkman. It was a long time ago. And I would listen while I would cross-country ski in the dark. And I just loved his show. He would play all these old rock and roll songs from the 50s and 60s. And then he'd talk about, silly things in between, and it was just wonderful. So radio can really connect. I remember I was listening to someone, Doc Charles has a show up at VX.
That's the local TRU independent radio station for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah. And I have an old record cabinet that has an old radio that barely works, but it was working that night. And it was just wonderful to listen to these old blues songs. Radio can be really rewarding, like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, what I like about your show, right, is what I love about podcasts is it's on demand, right? Where, like, current radio, you either catch it or you don't. Yeah. Well, yours lives in this world where, it really is a dedicated radio show, but it is on the demand too, right? Yeah. I can't listen to it on the fly unless I want to burn my data, but that's SoCan, and that's fine. I imagine a lot of these people are at home with their fancy audiophile stereos or whatever it be, but it's that on-demandness of it. Yeah. When you're putting together a show, are you scripting it, or are you kind of just freeballing?
Well, in the days before, sometimes weeks before, I'll have it all on paper. And so this is my last season, right? And of course, everyone at home can't see this.
It's like a grade school duotang full of line paper, which is hilarious because his day job is he's a teacher here in SD 73, it's hilarious.
And I've been doing it like this ever since the start, and it works for me. And then I have vocal breaks in here, and
so he writes down his set lists is what it is, right? So he's got, in this one he's got 10 songs with, 5 vocal breaks in between the songs to kind of keep the structure without actually writing what he's going to say at any point. Just here's the song, and this is where I want to pause, and this is where I want to, lead into the next song for anyone who is listening and obviously cannot see.
Yeah, and it's really structured. I mean, I listen to some people who have radio shows, and they're able to do an interesting show with hardly any prep. And I kind of envy that, because oftentimes, the pause button is my friend.
Yes.
And I go back and say no, and I swear and say that's not going to work. So it takes me a couple hours to do a 1-hour show, just because I'm constantly saying, no, I don't like that. And that's how I do it.
Yeah, it's a lot of commitment for a hobby, and it always struck me when we met the first time, and I was like, "Are you gonna try and monetize or do anything?" And you're like, "No interest." You know, because to me, it's like you're paying a yearly subscription, not just for your hosting, but for your SOCAN license, right? I've got the equipment. I just have to pay for the hosting at this point, right? Which is fairly cheap.
Sure. The way I look at it is everyone pays for a hobby. Some people golf. Some people make craft beer, you know, at home, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I do my radio show. And so, you know, I know that I spend a good chunk of money every year to do this. But that's okay. I kind of don't like having a donate button.
Yeah.
Just because that seems like more work. You know what I mean? And I just like it, so I have as little work to do as possible on it. Yeah.
It's like you've almost translated your record store in your 30s, so when you just got to share your love of music into this online library of archives of you know your curated music, which is really cool.
Yep.
Right? And you've kind of just removed the business aspect of it, which is, you know, not traditional in the sense of this whole world of side hustles and create and sell and You're kind of like you're an outlier, and it's amazing, and your contentedness is, you know, I'm envious of it, actually, in a way, right? Like,
I don't want to call it a man cave. I kind of think that word's kind of dumb. But, you know, I've got posters up on the wall of shows that I've been to, and I've got, of course, the record library in there. And, you know, it's a fun place to hang out and put together a show, you know. I've had my niece and my nephew show up and help me with a show. And
awesome.
You know, I might have guests in the future. I've done interviews in the past when I was up at the old station. And, you know, I might get into that in the future, you know.
Well, you've got a really great voice for radio. And that's the first thing that struck me when I met you, right? It's like, man, he's got a fantastic radio voice. It makes so much sense, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you. When I was a kid, I was teased by my voice because I was into public speaking, and I was in 4-H, and I do speeches, and, you know, people had kind of teased me because of my voice. But it's worked for, you know, in the classroom and on the radio show.
Yeah. So to go back to your classroom thing, right? You work kind of on call, which is you're happy with. You know, you're a very content man. You mentioned that you bring a puppet. Are you a puppeteer as well?
Half the kids in Kamloops know about Penny. Yeah, I bring a puppet around. She's a seal, and you know, she gets a good chunk of my paycheck, but it's for good behavior. You know, I say, you know, we'll get to see Penny if we can earn 5 stars on the board, but you have to listen. You know, and we have good days. Mainly because of Penny, or a big part of it is because of Penny. Yeah,
and that's that's really, really funny.
I don't talk about Penny a lot. But anyways,
sorry, is that okay that I brought that up?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, yeah. But yeah, I bring a puppet into the classroom. She hates being called a puppet. She doesn't like that.
So, where did you come up with Hurtin' for real? Like, I know the country scene at one point had more depressive references than hip-hop music. Is that kind of where that comes from, or?
Well, I kind of hate the name of my show. I kind of like it, but I kind of don't. It's kind of corny in a way, but I've stuck with it. I'm not going to change it. I guess it kind of has a double meaning. You know, I'm hurting for real country, in the fact that I'd like to hear more of it. Mm-hmm. And it's also how some people feel, you know, some subjects of country songs, they're really feeling a kind of pain.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it kind of has a double meaning, I guess.
Yeah. It always struck me because you drop the G for anyone listening. There's no G on Hurtin'. It's Hurtin' for real. And I had a tough time finding it, actually, the first time I learned about it. I'm like, Hurting, and I kept on like, it's not here.
Yeah, I always say Hurtin', no G, no apostrophe. Yeah. But there's a guy named Marty Stewart who is a country music legend, and I interviewed him, and, you know, we talked about Hurtin' songs, and he has all these Hurtin' songs, and, you know, so does his wife, Connie Smith, and, you know, we talked about, you know, how there's real pain in certain country songs that you don't hear nowadays. Yeah. You know, nowadays a lot of the country music is about drinking beer on the tailgate in the moonlight, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's a real narrow genre.
Yeah, it's been a few years, but in my final year of university, I had a lab partner or whatever you want. We were paired up for some sort of article, and he wanted to talk about hillbillies, and then the creation of hillbillies, and it was something like hillbilly music was one of actually the first types of music that was ever actually recorded, and that kind of almost spawned a lot of what country is, and a lot of really kicking off what music was, because so many people were able to connect with the idea of this hillbilly genre, right?
Yep.
Was from that Hurtin thing, because who can't connect to the struggle of trying to produce something out of barren land or whatever it is, right? Which but meeting you in person, right? You're a very soft-spoken guy, right? So it's like, all right. I just wonder if there's a little bit more there, or because when you look at you, right, you're pardon my ignorance, you don't look like a cowboy.
No, and I'm not a cowboy. I grew up on a farm. My mom and dad they've had a farm for, hell, they've been there 50 years. And, I grew up with country music. There was always Gordon Lightfoot or Chris Christopherson on the turntable. Don Williams cassettes around, Willie Nelson, that type of thing. And, that's straight ahead country music. And, that's where I got my love of it. Back in the 1980s, there was some different country music on the air. K.D. Lang, Lyle Lovett, Steve Earle, Blue Rodeo, they all had kind of a country connection, but they weren't straight ahead country. They were a little different, and I really liked that. And I still play those artists today, Commercial country doesn't.
No.
Commercial country stays away from anything that is different or exciting,
Which is what the beauty of the internet is, right? Where everyone, you've connected with your followers, and you found them, and they continue to support you or whatever and that's the beauty of the internet, right? Is these micro niches, right? Because in the music genre you have country. Now within the country genre you have what you consider real country, or I don't know if you take it the next level from there.
Yeah, there's a whole debate on what is real country, right? And I'm sure that every generation has its argument about country music. It's just the stuff I play. Yeah. Listen to the show, and that's what country music is to me. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you think of like the Rockin' River Festival, these big festivals?
It's not my kind of music.
Yeah.
And I will say this. Not this year, but last year, Willie Nelson and family and Casey Musgraves came. And I was all about to go. I was thrilled to go. Had a media pass. I was so excited about it.
Oh, awesome.
And it was really smoky. And there were other reasons why I couldn't go, and I decided not to go. But they brought Willie Nelson and Casey Musgraves there, and I adore both of them. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, no, I'm not into that. Most of the artists that I like, I just went and saw a guy named Sean Burns. He's from Winnipeg, and he's got a radio show that's wicked. It's called Boots and Saddle, CKUW, campus station in Winnipeg. And he just did a tour out all the way to here. And he did a house concert. And it was wonderful. There were 30 people there, and it was thrilling. And that's the type of thing that doesn't get played on radio. It would have years ago. Doesn't now. But, I play his kind of country music,
It wasn't in the basement here.
Yeah, the basement.
The basement, yeah. Yeah, the Olds family.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say house party, or I'm like, there's only one place that I know that can maybe hold 30 people and have, established artists come on by to perform.
Yeah, it was a wonderful night, yeah.
Well, when you mentioned you got a media pass, is that something you reached out, or are you having people now look to you a little bit in the scene?
It's a mix of a lot of things.
Yeah.
When I was up at the station, we would reach out to the artists or the labels, promoters, whatever. Now I do it,
Yeah.
I just a lot of these guys I've known for years. So I just say, I'm going to come to the show. Do you want to talk? And they say, sure.
Awesome.
And, I've got to do more interviews because I haven't done one in my new home. But, I'm coming up on my anniversary, my 16th year
Your
anniversary.
16th year.
Yeah, I started back in 2002. And,
my gosh.
Yeah.
You've been doing this since I was 10 years old. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Like that's really, really amazing. And like, I'd encourage you to consider expanding into podcasts if you are doing the interview stuff, because then you can have the on-demand side of while you're driving, right? Rather than the streaming or whatever it be, right? And you can use Anchor.fm for free.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to add another cost to your rather big debt load of stuff to basically share with people your passion, which is really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm not that comfortable with a computer. I like a turntable. That's major technology for me is a turntable. So I usually have to get others to come in and help me with certain aspects of my show. And that's fun. Yeah.
Interesting. So you built a fancy computer, but you'd rather still use your turntable.
Oh yeah. I love my turntable and the old records and the new ones. I mean, bands are still making so many records and cassettes.
They're repressing them. You can pick up cassettes of local artists here at Redbeard or at Factotum, which is JP Lancaster, and there's that's interesting resurgence of having something in your hand to physically hold, as well as have the digital copy or whatever it be, right?
Yep.
It's always nice. Well, Brian, is there anything else you kind of want to share for anyone listening? Much like you, not a big listenership, right?
Yep.
But anything else you want to chat about or share?
I don't think so. I mean, hurtinforreal.com is where I am. I'm on Twitter as well. You Google me, you'll find me. But you'll see me around town at shows, and I like connecting with people and talking about music and listening to music, playing music. I mean, it's who knows? There's even a little scene in Kamloops, and hopefully that grows.
Well, I would hope there'd be a scene in Kamloops because you got Merritt, which is supposed to be the country capital of Canada, just next door, right?
Yeah.
So I'd hope it would kind of translate over here, right? And there's kind of there's like a bull riding scene actually in this area too, right? So I'd imagine 1 and 2 lends itself pretty well.
I think most bull riders listen to AC/DC and
really?
that type of thing. Yeah. Maybe not. But
who knows?
Yep.
I'll have to find out. I'll have to go interview a bull rider one day. Actually, Stephen Palo used to be the North Shore BIA guy. He's been part of the bull riding scene for a little while now, and he's doing cowboy gaming is what his thing is. But thank you for chatting to me about your interest in country and your online radio station.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Nevin.
Yeah. So everyone, please check out his radio station online at Hurtin, no G, no apostrophe, forreal.com. Take a listen. If you're at all interested in listening to what real country is, Brian's got it for you all there. And he's doing this for 16 years. Like, how cool is that? That's really shows commitment to the genre and a love. And I can only hope to make my podcast last half that length. Anyways, till next time, tune in to Cameo Podcast and, subscribe if you're new. Cheers. Bye-bye.